Altcoins reached their peak against Bitcoin back in January of 2018. That's 7.5 years ago. So technically, this altcoin bear market has been going on for over 7.5 years, with the exception of a 5-month period in 2021. Now, that has led many investors to think that there is going to be absolutely easy riches in altcoins coming up just around the corner almost every single day since we've seen the lows for Bitcoin and altcoins back in November of 2022. So for the last nearly 3 years, many have anticipated that there is an altcoin season coming up. In the meantime, Bitcoin's done 700%, and altcoins have merely done a 200% gain from the low at the same time. So when will this bear market, multi-year bear market, end for altcoins? And more importantly, how can we assess if this is going to be a strong altcoin season and make it worth the risk of holding those altcoins instead of Bitcoin, which has simply done a 7x since the low?
Now, you might fucking laugh, but it's true. You understand what I'm talking about? I'm not talking bullshit, I'm talking reality.
Now, there are going to be a few people laughing at that fact. Some people have made some significant gains along the way, but it has been few and far between. So I want to make things easier, break it down for you, and hopefully you can use this in your own analysis to assess what you're going to do next. The altcoin multi-year bear market, essentially against Bitcoin. We're not trying to create maxis here. We're just trying to make life easier for ourselves when it comes to trading and investing, because essentially it's one of the hardest things you're ever going to do in life. And if it was easy, well, we know the saying, everyone would be millionaires, or in this day and age, multi-millionaires. So a few things to get through in today's video. Altcoin signs this cycle is over. No, I'm not talking about the altcoin cycle being over. I'm just talking about signs to look for. If any of those are popping up, then we need to be well aware in advance. Headwinds for this season: altcoins basically fighting against each other, and then a look at the macro backdrop. 5 markers for altcoin revival. I've updated this from 3. Instead of leaving it some bonuses, I'm making it 5 markers and giving you clear definitions for what I'm looking for the major and minor revivals. Defining altcoin season success, I think it's prudent to understand whether we're going to see that success and can we measure that success, as opposed to each of these little pumps that come up from the lows. Basically, a lot of people get excited for the small pumps, but essentially I don't see that as anything worthwhile considering the risk that we hold in holding those altcoins. And what if this is or is not the bottom that we see on altcoins, whether we're looking at the altcoin chart against Bitcoin, whether we're looking at the others dominance chart, or also the total market cap charts like Total 3 or Total 3 without the stablecoins. Now, our daily videos cover many detailed charts, data, indicators, and our forte, the cycle analysis, to help guide us through the investment cycle. So if you're a brand new subscriber to the channel, then I highly encourage you to get our weekly reports on Bitcoin, altcoins, and the economy, including the real estate cycle. They're easy to read in under 5 minutes each, making them extremely digestible for all investor levels. There are 3 reports coming your way starting your week from Tuesday. It'll get you up to speed on how we forecast the markets and how we've been able to profit during uncertain times leading into and out of the cycle peak. It's completely free, so subscribe today using the link in the top of the video description and you'll receive your first report shortly. Now, we'll start off with the not so good news because that's a lot less than what I think the good news is for an altcoin season. Headwinds, altcoin fighting, pretty straightforward. There's now 19 million cryptos that are tracked on CoinMarketCap. Even if half of these are absolute garbage and there's no point in them, that would leave you with 9.5 million. If another half of those are absolute garbage, you're still in the absolute millions of coins to be tracking. And this cycle, you can see the amount of coins that are created every day, spanning anywhere from 20,000 to 70,000, some spikes here, over 100,000 cryptos traded a day. You've probably heard that argument before. There's just so many more coins with roughly the same money floating around in the cycle. And if we take a look back at 2017, that cycle, the big one that altcoins really got pumping and everyone was excited about them, there was basically an altcoin created every day some days zeros, other days one altcoin created then, and the total count was a hell of a lot less, looking at somewhere around 18,000. Basically 10 to 20,000 coins in total was what we were able to trade back in 2017, compared to now something like 20 million different coins. And of those coins, well, we know a lot of those are pretty much rubbish, and the few that are doing anything haven't really seen any significant gains because the money just keeps floating around between Bitcoin and altcoins. Meanwhile, this cycle, Bitcoin outperforms altcoins. As you can see here, this is the total market cap, including stablecoins, mind you. So it's giving it a little more benefit of the doubt because stablecoins have also increased. And in this case, it's up 200% from this cycle low, but still down on the previous cycle. So the green line is the altcoin cycle. The orange line is Bitcoin. Here is your green line right at the top. That's the previous cycle's all-time high. And it is still down. We've only had a couple of days above the previous all-time high. Again, including stablecoins, which are a lot more this cycle than what they were last cycle. So that's also leaning to the fact that we're seeing higher prices here for the altcoin market, and it's still down from those highs. Meanwhile, Bitcoin is up from the highs that we put in December 24, and obviously a lot further up from the previous cycle where the top was somewhere around $70,000. Now, of course, currently sitting at about $115,000. Now, the macro landscape isn't looking great just for the next couple of months, as we've been tracking here on the cycles. Just looking at the S&P 500 as a broad overview. I'm not going to go into a deep dive in anything macroeconomic related. Just looking at the cycles, as I've done this in previous videos, the S&P 500 has been tracking relatively well to our 5-year cycle, our 20-year cycle, our 40-year cycle, which suggests there is some downside coming up in Q3 and early Q4 before we start to see some more positive signs and further upside for the market. Now, of course, the S&P 500 isn't exactly the economy. It generally leads the economy. So if it is going up, there's still a lot of negativity going around in the economy, but the stock market can be going up because based on forward earnings, like the profits that are coming out, which is typically why when you see profit reports, the earnings reports coming out, and if they are positive and the market goes down, is because the smart money has already priced that into the market. Same deal on the flip side. So overall, this is the next stage of the cycle that we're tracking. Obviously, stay up to date on the channel should things change, but we are seeing a bit of a decline, a rally, and then a further decline as well. I don't think anything substantial like what we saw in the first tariff scare, which was roughly a 20% correction, but I think there is at least some consolidation to take place after over 30% increase from that low. So let's take a look at some of the signs that this altcoin cycle is over, or if it's going to be weak, starting with our indicator, our TIA total 3 chart. Here it is here. This one excludes the stablecoin so we can get a better reading of the market overall. You can see the previous all-time high sitting somewhere around $1 trillion. This cycle's high so far is at about $940 billion. So it still has not exceeded the previous all-time high. It still hasn't closed above the previous all-time high either. Currently sitting somewhere around $700 billion, which is in strength. Sitting above 700 is above the 50% of the downtrend. It's also above the 50% of the bull market so far. So here is the low to the high, slice it through the middle to give you the 50%, sitting above 550 billion. And what we know about 50% levels is if it's trading in the top half, it's generally a much stronger sign. You can see the market begin to consolidate above those levels. If it consolidates above the 50%, that's much, much stronger. You can see it happen earlier in this move out of the April lows, broke below it, but then quickly above, tested resistance, came back, sat on the 50%, and then recently just broke out of that 50%. So it seems like things are consolidating at this point. The weak sign, if this altcoin cycle is over, is if we saw a larger correction than what we've just seen. So we've seen 2 significant corrections, 330 billion and a $500 billion. So far, not much. But if this was to break under the 50% and then start to put in a larger correction, which would then mean this is a lower high, I would suspect that that is almost over. Basically, almost all of the nails in the coffin have been met. If we take a look at what 500 billion, so this is the correction through here, what that would look like from the top, 500 billion would take you all the way down to something like 330. Of course, that's a long way off. It is a macro change in trend. And for a macro change in trend, you essentially need larger moves to occur. Those would take out each of these previous lows or get very close to that August low of 2024. I suspect we would see signals before that. To me, the signals would be a breakdown of 700 and then a breakdown of 550, which was that previous swing low before the market ran up. So I think we would see, well, in my books, we would have earlier signs, but if it did happen to correct all the way down 500 billion, is almost a zero chance of another altcoin season if we got that far. Okay, so that's the first thing. Bitcoin dominance continues higher. That's pretty straightforward. If we continue to see Bitcoin dominance rally from here, take out the highs. At this later stage, it's possible that that would be another sign that the cycle is over, or in fact, it's just going to be another weak move to the upside. So some would still move, but we just wouldn't see that extra breakthrough. USDT dominance doesn't break 3.7%. This is the low here. And so far in this cycle, 2024, 2025, if you want to count it from the low of 2022, we have not seen the dominance break past 3.7%. And in my books, I don't think we've seen a significant altcoin season like we've seen in previous cycles where the dominance basically fell. It only had to fall less than that because there were less coins and more money to go around to those coins. So unless we see a 3.7% breakdown, I don't think we're going to get those exuberant feelings of altcoin season, and it's going to be the select few that get it. You can see there's just not going to be as much coin to go around. Others dominance below support at 9%. So essentially, if the others chart remained below this level roughly here, there is 9%, there is 10%, and it was not able to get above that. That to me would be a weak altcoin season, as it has not overbalanced any of the previous alt seasons that we've seen in this cycle. We've essentially seen two significant ones. The first being 2023 that ran up into the December top, and the second being a much shorter one that we saw recently from November into December of 2024. And some might even count what we saw recently, but that is such a tiny, tiny move on the dominance chart that I essentially would just see it as another rally in the move. Should this break down, or should it basically find resistance a little higher and still break down from that point? You might just get a little bit more sucked in and then it fail from there. So basically anything under this 9 to 10% level is not an extreme, or it's not a significant altcoin season. And to me is a sign that the altcoin cycle is either A, over, or essentially was just rather weak. So that's number 4. And number 5 is if ETH fails at 4 grand where it currently is, because that would be a weakening signal if ETH is not able to overcome the previous highs. So far, 2 highs at 4,000, getting very close at the moment. Ideally, the consolidation continues here for ETH, takes a little bit more time, that then lines up with everything we're talking about here on the S&P 500. Eventually, that money flowing out, the risk on appetite returns into altcoins. But I think it's going to need a little bit more time, as we've been covering here on some of these signals. So the weakness in the altcoin cycle, or if the cycle is over or weak, you can flip those now into the revival. So if we saw the opposite of each of those signals. So now that I've explained that, this can be a lot quicker. USDT dominance, if it goes below 3.75%, we're not there yet, could be happening. Lower highs so far, lower lows. 3.7, there it is. We're currently at 4.4 as I film this video. And a breakdown from that, that would be a mega season there between 2.5 to 3.7%. On a side note, if you begin to see a lot of the exuberance, the sentiment flow back through, and this dominance has not broken 2.5, I suspect you'd begin to see some sort of market top in this zone here if it's able to get that far. Otherwise, we'll see more market tops at 3.7%, like we've done in March 2024, like we again saw in December 2024, and like we saw in January 2025. So we've already seen 3 market tops for Bitcoin and for altcoins, 74,000, 108,000, and 109,000 so far. So this can be a fantastic signal to avoid the emotions when the market is running hot. That's what I'm using this for here, so that you're not throwing in extra money as it begins to approach a support level. Now, there is the chance that it breaks these support levels and continues on. That there are pretty slim chances that the stablecoin dominance, in this case USDT, would go under 2%. That means 2% of the entire crypto market cap. It is possible, and we'll obviously assess things should it get there. It's happened in the past, but this was at a point when stablecoins had a lot smaller market cap, so therefore it was a lot smaller of a piece of the pie. That's the first marker for an altcoin revival, break of the 3.7. Otherwise, we're basically churning between 3.7 and the current price of 4.4%. Money just continues to flow between Bitcoin, strong alts, back to Bitcoin, back to stablecoins, and you just get this churning effect. Number two, Bitcoin dominance is an overbalance in time and price. We're still waiting on this. We have not seen a larger correction on Bitcoin dominance than what we saw in that short period, November into December. Basically, the dominance corrected and altcoins went crazy for those few weeks. We haven't seen the market extend that yet. Most expect it to be coming. I'd rather wait to see if that happens and then get super excited for anything major. The times prior to that were really that period through 2023 where the dominance continued to grind. It was grinding higher. Some altcoins were popping off, but this was basically the slowest period that Bitcoin dominance was growing at. So for a revival, you'd need to see a breakdown of that dominance. Others, a support at 6%. That's a minor sign here. So that has already happened. We've seen the support down at 6.5% or so. Yep, there it is, 6.9%. And the next level is that 9% that I was talking about. So it's above all of these highs, it's above these lows, essentially flipping the resistance into support. So breaking above that because it has a lot of resistance, roughly around that 10 to 10.5%. So that's the next thing on the dominance. If we were to see this above the 9 to 10% range, while Bitcoin dominance was breaking down, while USDT dominance was breaking down, a lot of those that would come about, those ticks there on the checklist, that could be a pretty significant altcoin season. Total 3, this is on our TIA market. We have found support at the moment above 700 billion. So tick 1, that's for the minor. So we're at the minor stage. The macro, the major, is going to be above the 1 trillion. Previous tops here, 950. Previous all-time high, 1 trillion. A breakout above this level, that is going to hopefully send things absolutely crazy, along with it lining up with the others. The Bitcoin dominance, USDT, could be a massive season. And ETH, as long as it remains above 2,900, which it is at a minor point, so this is for like a minor altcoin season, which we typically continue to churn through. I think we've seen half of that, but above that $38,000 to $4,000, get all these 5 markers to line up, then I think you've got yourself a massive altcoin season, which we can now define the altcoin success. So I come down to my altcoin success of altcoin season. I'd want to see others dominance move more than 12 points and total 3 up over 800 billion from a swing. So this is right here. So we got 500 so far. So basically looking at how much money is coming into the market. And we've seen 2 significant altcoin seasons in this cycle so far. However, they have not compared to the previous cycle. Previous cycle, we saw 800 billion and 700 billion. That is for some significant swing lows. And if you want to take it all the way back to the bottom of the COVID crash, you're looking at 855 billion. So I'm just going to take it from the breakout point here as the market was grinding higher, and then the explosive move, essentially looking for that altcoin feeling. How do you define, how do you measure that altcoin season, altcoin feeling that everyone expects? Because a lot of the time, most people will not measure anything. They just go off feelings. So if we can find a way to measure the feelings, well, then hopefully we can define what the significant altcoin season was and whether it was successful. And hopefully you are successful in that endeavor as well to your altcoin season portfolio. So we've got the first level at the moment, the 700 billion, but the move to the upside, how much money is coming into this space, the $800 billion mark would take us to somewhere around, let's say a round number to the upside, $1.3 trillion. So 1.3 takes you to around 850, 780, 730. That would exceed previous moves in the previous cycle. I would want to see at least that for successive altcoin season. And that means it's going to be more money flowing and probably, no guarantees, but probably going to be a lot easier for more of these altcoins to move higher in that period. So more people are going to be seeing paper profits in their portfolios. Hopefully they begin to take some profits from there. Speaking of Bitcoin and following its own cycles, 5 and 20-year cycles combined for BTC, just looking at the chart pattern as to what may occur next, you can see we've gone through this next peak. The red line in the background is the 5 and the 10-year combined. The blue line is what's actually happening this year. I'm using those two charts. 2020 had a significant correction with COVID, and 2015 was the bottom of the previous cycle. Now, it's got nothing to do with trying to line up bears and bulls and all this sort of thing. We're doing what Gann did, looking at 5, 10, 20-year cycles. And of course, Bitcoin doesn't have a 20 years worth of history. It has 5 and 10 years. And they were two important cycles that Gann watched. And so we're not trying to copy halving years or those sort of things. We're just trying to look at years, as I said, that Gann followed, but in this case, look at the pattern of what happened in those years. And we're not trying to get an exact repeat, but we're seeing similar patterns here where the first quarter was strong, fell into a weak position. Quarter 2 started to rally out of that weak position. And quarter 3 basically was another consolidation with a spike and a correction. You can see it basically ended flat there for quarter 3. But the interesting part here is what happens in quarter 4 when we align these cycles, your 5-10, your 5-year and your 10-year. And as we go out towards December, here is October, November, December. That is your quarter 4. October starts off a little slow, and then things really get going. Each of these markets are able to hold where they are, consolidate for the next 4, 6, 8 weeks. I'm looking sort of 4 to 6 weeks at this point, and then start to show signs that they want to break out of the consolidation. I think we could be in for a pretty good quarter 4, potentially even into quarter 1 of 2026. But we won't get too excited just yet. I think there's a little bit of heartache to be coming up, especially with what I talked about yesterday with the Bitcoin monthly forward returns here. This is your TIA indicator suite. There's a link to it in the video description if you want to use it for your own analysis. Looking at the months of August and September, I'll have more on this coming up in today's Bitcoin and economic report. So stay tuned for that. Link is in the top of the video description. August, September, a red, green, red, green, red, green sort of pattern happens 5 out of 10 times. So 33% of the time. Otherwise, it's red and red. So again, not overly great for the bulls there, but it could be consolidation for the rest of the year, that quarter 4. Red, green, and a green September has typically led into more green in quarter 4. Green, green, green September, more green, green September, more green, and led into quarter 1 as well. And where's this one? Also led into quarter 1, 2024. Here is your green September, more green. You had a red January 2015, but then a green February. Coming down the page, green September, more green, absolutely hammered in December, but this was the cycle peak with a huge 500, nearly 500% return. Green September, couple more greens here with a small red in October. Remember, this was coming off many, many green months as well. And then 2010, green into more green, into more green. So if you've got patience, I think you're going to make it. If you are only in here for these coins are going to go up in the next 7 days or next 10 days, then unfortunately, I don't think you're going to make it. But if you've made it this far in the video, I'm pretty sure you're not one of those people. And if you have made it this far, I'll surprise you with a bit of XRP analysis. Should we continue to consolidate above 2,000, I think there is a chance that we break above 3,000. This is on the Satoshis against BTC. Because at the end of the day, you want your altcoins to be outperforming Bitcoin. And the way to review that, to measure that, is to look at your altcoin against its Bitcoin value. So if this is going up, your altcoin's going up against Bitcoin, then you're going to be making bigger gains than BTC or not as much losses as BTC. Because if Bitcoin's going down and your altcoin's going down, but the alt BTC chart is going up, well, then you're not losing as much money that what Bitcoin is losing either. So again, it's a stronger altcoin if it's going up against BTC. The consolidation continues here. I don't want to see any breakdowns of 2,000 Satoshis on a weekly or monthly closing basis. Spikes underneath are okay, but yeah, we don't want to see that breakdown on a monthly basis there. Breaks above, closes above that 3,000, 3,500 level is going to be fantastic for a little more upside for XRP getting to the 4,000 and 5,000 level. So if altcoins can do both of these things, I would label it a massive success. And if they did do it, we would see this earlier on with those significant breakout levels that I've marked up in today's video, one in particular breaking past that 9 to 10% level. If this video was helpful for you, check out the videos popping up now on the left-hand side. You will also find that one useful for your trading and investing. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys back here at the next video. Cheers.
So it's all fucked. Do you understand me? The people don't understand. Do you understand that?
Yeah, I understand.
Well, there's a lot of the cunts don't, and that's the problem with the world.